Hey, it's Mike Brennan, and we're doing another edition of Michigan Marijuana Today. And I have with me my co-host, Tim Beck, and we're going to be talking about the recent hash bash, which just happened last weekend. And he has a special guest with him. I'll let Tim introduce his guest and provide the background. Take it away, Tim.
Oh, my pleasure, Chuck. Good to see you, buddy. Him and I go a long way back. Chuck lives in Ann Arbor, and it just so happened I got to know him in 2004 when I was doing a ballot initiative in Detroit to legalize medical use of marijuana under Detroit City Code, and mine was due to be on the ballot in August. And then I heard about this other medical initiative in Ann Arbor. And that's how I met Chuck. and we've been buddies ever since. And, Chuck is a veteran of many, hash bashes and keen observer of things. I thought he'd be a perfect guest to help describe the scene. I was there myself. It's quite unique, quite a different hash bash. In a sense, it wasn't as big of a crowd because the University of Michigan basically banned this Monroe Street Fair. It's a street festival that attracts all kinds, like thousands of people that basically come to Ann Arbor to get high. It's more of a festival. It's more of a party kind of scene, and that's all right. But the original hash bash was basically it's a protest and an assertion, of our rights to use cannabis as we see fit. And Chuck has been a long time person, on the scene, and he was there, and he was a speaker and everything like that. So that's the deal. What do you think, Chuck? Did you?
Uh, can can you see me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can see you fine. Go ahead.
Great. Well, yeah, I was at Hash Bash, this Hash Bash, and I was at the first Hash Bash a long time ago. It kind of died out a little in the '80s and was resurrected by Rich Burkett and then Adam Berg. The Hash Bash is a large and really durable folk festival celebrating cannabis sativa, which the people who go to Hash Bash regard as a miracle plant that could help our society tremendously. And I just noticed today that cannabis sales are going up and alcohol sales are going down.
Hmm.
My brother and my sister and my father all died essentially from drinking too much alcohol. And so I have a stomach problem, so I can't drink alcohol, and cannabis is my medicine. But I think that's the first time that this cultural change, moving away from alcohol, has ever happened, really. And I saw in California that the people in Napa Valley couldn't even sell when their credit ran out. They couldn't even sell their vineyards. They had to auction them. And I thought, well, uh, this is quite a momentous change in society. Uh, Ask me anything you want about Hash Bash. This year, it was more controlled in terms of commerce than it was last year and the year before. It was beginning to get a touch out of control.
Yeah. There was a lot of the big hullabaloo, in the media leading up to the event, and I didn't. It sounded very alarmist. Let's put it that way. And there was all kinds of rumors floating around that it's going to be closed down. They're not going to be able to get a permit because they doubled the level of liability insurance to $3 million for any terrible incident that might happen. And there was a momentary panic to some degree that seeped into the news. And I would have to say the actual organizers, as I understand for the hash bash, they had to work. It was some tough negotiations and everything like that. And there were all these threats again about people being arrested for smoking weed if you do it on a diet. I didn't see anything like that. There were a couple stories that said two or three people were given tickets or something like that. Many of them were a couple people were arrested that apparently they didn't follow orders. The cops told them to put it out, they wouldn't. So bam, they're busted and that kind of thing. Yeah, but I mean, I didn't see anybody. There's all kinds of people smoking weed on the Diag. It's like nothing had ever changed, and there were no cops, no undercover narcs that used to be there back in the bad old days. Before legalization ever hit. I'm talking about the 80s and 90s, where there actually be people, in the crowd, cops in the crowd. They looked a little scruffy, but they enacted like they were marijuana users, and all of a sudden you'd see a hand go up in the air, and they're clicking their fingers, and that was the signal to take the person down. And they were pulled to the ground, handcuffed, right on the diag. I mean, this is some years ago, but it could get kind of tense. And then the University of Michigan always is a highly political, kind of entity. It really goes with whichever way the political winds are blowing. And they tried, to close down Hash Bash, at least, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, and they had to get the ACLU got involved, and, Hash Bash was saved, and U of M couldn't do anything about it at that point. And it was, again, tense, and there were plenty of cops around. And then later on, as times changed, diversity just, it was no big deal at all. Real simple kind of thing. And it was almost hip. Let's put it that way. And you had all kinds of folks, coming, to the bash from, all over the state. I knew a guy from Cincinnati, another one for Florida, that would fly, came up, to get involved. And there was up to 10,000 people, 10, sometimes even more, depending if the weather was good. Other times, I mean, I even didn't do it because it was the sleet and freezing rain was so intense. I had a bit of a cold. I said, I'm not doing this. Okay. I just drove home after that. But in this one, it's about 3,000. That's my guesstimate.
They had a policy objective to make it different than last year. Last year, people were walking around selling everything cannabis related that you could imagine. Giant bags of pot and giant bags of joints. I saw a woman walking around with little plants for sale, and they managed to allow the social protest of the Hash Bash and cut out all that commerce this year. And so I think they accomplished the objective they were setting out for. If you came there for the Hash Bash and you sat in the basic circle of people who were there for the Hash Bash, not on the edge, but more toward the middle of the circle or up on the stage, you were protected. They were absolutely not interested in bothering us. How could they jump on people and start arresting people when we're going to have Debbie Dingle and Jeff Irwin in speaking with us? So people on the periphery of the crowd could get ticketed or busted, a fairly minor infraction. But I call it the circle of protection. If you were within the basic circle of protection of the Hash Bash itself, you weren't bothered. And they didn't try to do anything with photographic equipment or anything sophisticated like that.
Let's talk about the origins of the Hash Bash. I must admit, I was a student at the U of M back in the 70s, and I think I was at the first one, but I can't remember exactly. But let's talk about how it all started, what it was all about, excuse me, and how it's evolved.
Well, okay, go on, Chuck. You were there. You said you were at the first one, so why don't you take
Yeah,
that?
I was at the first one, and I think it was Michigan law, not the federal law, where there was a lapse, but I think there was a lapse of a couple of months in Michigan law relating to cannabis, so that they didn't really have a law for a little while. And John Sinclair took advantage of that opportunity to have a festival right on the Diag, a very bold thing, as he was prone to do, and have the first festival, the first Hash Bash. And then it went on from there and was popular for quite a while, and sort of died out and then came back. And we succeeded with legalization in Michigan. Michigan is one of the only states that has such a strong, true grassroots movement, and where the political legalization came through the people in the grassroots movement there at Hash Bash. And then, of course, in Michigan, we ended up with the best law and the best commerce. Uh, we sell more cannabis than California, evidently, and that's amazing given the two populations. But we've been quite successful in Michigan, and Tim and I laid the groundwork in terms of local electoral victories for the strength of the Michigan cannabis scene.
Hmm. True. The thing I really liked about this particular hash bash, there was the festival thing was, and all those people coming. It was all right. I mean, it didn't bother me or anything like that. It was a little out of control. It was a bit outrageous. And one of the things, apparently there were a lot of teenagers, local teenagers in the high school cruising into, to hash bash and, getting high and that type of thing. That was another irritant that was involved. And I think the university was also, because they've been really, the Trump administration has been very aggressive with them and trying to cut grants and get rid of DEI and these kinds of things. So I think partly they weren't taking any chances. They were trying to be as, you know, public relations uh, uh, alert as possible. And they tried to cancel this Ethino Fest, this magic mushroom fest earlier in the year, and it failed. They ran into free speech and the ACLU and everything like that. But this one though, what I liked, it was really a gathering. I would have to say, of those people in the Diag of old warriors, people that were really fought for this, and many suffered persecution, arrest, scorn, loss of jobs, just all kinds of just nonsense. And they're all back. Everybody's back. And there were folks that I hadn't seen, or commiserate with in a long time. And the cannabis reform movement in Michigan, which ultimately led to legalization, it had its share of infighting here and there, and frayed nerves and disagreements, but it never got ugly, it never got mean, like it did in states like Ohio, for instance, Arizona, and this type of thing. And so I was just seeing all those people, and it was just it was very relaxed. I have to say, it was a very relaxed, kind of atmosphere. And I reconnected with a few people that I hadn't got along with and been and kind of informally estranged from, and all that was in that baggage was gone. It was just gone, and it was just nice. There was a party afterward, and Michigan Normal had reserved a place on Ashley Street. People were coming, to that, and that evening before, and but in this case, again, it was about preserving our rights. And again, I never thought like this Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. The first time I can tell you about her, first time I was ever on TV in a legitimate, media, in a mainstream media show was Flashpoints with Devin Scillian. It was on Channel 4, whatever. And I was doing this medical marijuana initiative in Detroit. And of course, there were the three co-hosts. Well, Devin Scillian was the moderator. Then there's a guy named Mario Moro, a black guy, and a so-called political consultant. And Steve Mitchell, he's a Republican, identified with the GOP, and he was a pollster and a political pundit. And there was none other than Debbie Dingell, and her husband was in Congress. Okay, and at the time, but she was, a very powerful, alert person in her own right. I mean, this woman just lit into me like you wouldn't believe. Extraordinary, the venom, that came out. No, Mario Moro, he was confused. He think, oh, maybe it should be right, but I don't know. You just can't vote on it. And Steve Mitchell suggested, well, it might be all right for old people, they're having problems, this kind of thing. But Debbie, I mean, it was no go, period. And she later on, she just completely turned around. She explained she's turned it completely, you know got a complete turnaround. And she said that she openly admitted that her dad had serious substance abuse issues, and he could get violent and crazy and stuff like that. It was pretty rough growing up for her, and that's where that came from. And she recognized it, and she was there. I mean, she was complimenting and praising the likes of Adam Brook. Adam Brook he's a hash bash host and carried on. This guy probably is one of the most anti-establishment, anti-government, anarchistic individuals in his contempt for authorities and politicians on that you could ever imagine. And there she was praising Adam Brooke, and it was all right. I mean, I'm not saying it was, there was nothing phony. I mean, she seemed very, she really meant it. And then there was Jeff Irwin, State Senator Jeff Irwin, who's been a friend of this movement for years, as long as he's been in government. And sadly, he's going to be term limited out. He served his 3 terms in the legislature. Now he's finishes his 2 terms in the Senate. And then there was and by the way, there's the county prosecutor, Eli Savitt. He gave a rip-roaring speech and about, he was so pro-marijuana, and he specifically said his office was not going to prosecute anyone for marijuana. And he was almost kind of hinting around that, hey, everybody, it's all right. You toke up. I'll take care of it. You're not going to have any problems. But it was quite a powerful thing. And again, for anybody who's been in this movement for a long time, it was just sweet. It was just an absolutely wonderful experience. A real sense of camaraderie and unity and coexistence and everything like that. So
how has hash bash changed since it went legal in December 2019? I mean, adult legal cannabis. Has it changed at all? I mean, it used to be a a protest movement to get legalization. Now you got legalization. It's kind of evolved more into what, a celebration, I guess? Would you call it that, maybe?
Yeah, it's more celebration. It's still a political protest, however. But what happened was there got to be a lot more commerce, people selling joints and everything else as I described. And that wasn't really what the organizers wanted, although the organizers weren't kind of in a position to stop it. So it became a real question as to what to do, and the university decided what to do, and they did this sort of semi-policing this year, which worked out pretty well. The hash bash, though, is at the point where we have to have a fine festival, and if we get a whole lot of flack from the university, I think the hash bash should move somewhere else where we can really have space to spread out and respect for our herb. But if the University of Michigan keeps the enforcement like it was this year, where you're essentially safe within the basic perimeter of the protest, then maybe we can go on, because that is a fine forum, the Diag of the U of M.
Yeah. Well, if you were going to move it, where would you move it to?
You move it to Riverside Park in Ypsilanti. Huge park. They already allow cannabis events. We've already had a licensed event at Riverside Park. They have a stage there. There's plenty of room for people to spread out. I would move it to Riverside Park, and I would knock it back 1 month until the beginning of May, where people can be warmer, and really try to get it then to grow as a folk festival and retain the lineage of the hash bash, but give up the forum of the Diag, but have more freedom and space to spread out over at Riverside Park, Frog Island, that Ypsilanti complex by the river.
Yeah, I've actually been to a couple of events there, cannabis related. That was before the pandemic, of course. But yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. And you got lots of parking around there. I know there's a big field for parking and that sort of thing. But I like your idea of moving it ahead 1 month to May, or back 1 month to May, excuse me. Because the many times that I've attended Hash Bash, the weather is problematic. I mean, as Tim said, it's pretty nasty the first Saturday in April. I mean, in Michigan, it just is, So, but you could make it more of almost a spring festival, and even if it was only 65 degrees and it was sunny, I think that'd be a lot better for a lot of people. I think I was unable to attend this year. I had another commitment, but I'm told the weather was not so good this year, right, Tim?
It would be like May Day, the May Fest, beginning of spring.
Yeah.
No, it was not. It was not bad in my opinion. I mean, I've seen some really bad ones now, but this year it did get up to about high 60s. The only thing, and it was predicted that it was going to rain, but it didn't rain during the key period, which is noon on the Diag and the speeches and things like that. And I and about it. And about I left actually after about 2 o'clock. I wanted to make a shopping trip to some Middle Eastern grocery stores in Dearborn, and and I was coming back to Ann Arbor mid afternoon, and the rain was intense. I was coming back on 994, and people were pulling off the freeway. The rain was just coming down and just floodgates and torrents and stuff like that. So I wasn't in Ann Arbor then. I was in my car coming back. But I mean, I'm seeing situations. It's high. I agree. I mean, again, the hash bash is a very tradition bound thing. And yeah, I like the idea of being in May. But other people, they're traditionalists, and there's a dogmatic kind of thing. This is the day, it's the first Seder in April, and that's how it's going to be, and it's going to be on the Diag. And I'm not about to fight a battle like that. But I've been there many times. There was one time, I think a couple of years ago, and I was supposed to even speak, and I I said, no, I'm not doing this. And I was staying at Chuck's place, for the evening so I could be there in the morning. And I just got to my car. I just drove home. I was not going to be out in that crap. I mean, I just couldn't deal. I had kind of a cold also. And I didn't do it. And other times it'd be snowing. Other times it'd be 70 degrees. I remember there were people walking around in t-shirts and stuff like that on hash bash. Just highly quirky kind of thing.
So
I would say
you don't like Chuck's idea of moving it to Riverside Park then, or you do? I can't tell.
I have mixed feelings. I'm not going to go to war over something like that. Okay, I'm not going to press to have it moved. But if they move it, I'm not going to be complaining either. I mean, I'm kind of a traditionalist myself, and it's not a battle that I'm going to. I would not. Would engage in. And I've never been an organizer either. I've been speakers many times, but I've never been an actual organizer. And these organizers, it's work. It's real serious work and hassle and difficult, and they don't get paid or anything like that to do it. And I just love those people. And I just to me, whatever they want, I'll go along with it. Is my thinking with that.
All
But
right.
getting back to your other point, Mike, you asked about um, the um, the situation what happened after legalization hit. From what I'm seeing after legalization 2018, I would say it took on a wilder tone, and more people were coming there from all over the place, and they were just basically coming there to get high. I mean, no, again, nothing wrong with that, but it was a kind of crowd that a lot of them didn't strike me as real savory type people. It was kind of a wildness about the whole thing, especially last year. And last year was really, I was there, and it was quite,
Wow.
um,
I,
people were asserting their rights or whatever. So, yeah,
All right.
yeah. So that's yeah.
Before we wrap up, any other top news you want to talk about? The 24% wholesale tax is now going to the Michigan Supreme Court, hopefully very soon. And I think if they follow the law, the 24% tax will be tossed. But remains to be seen, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think my idea, my thinking waxes and wanes. From one minute, I think we're going to lose. Another minute, I think we're going to win. I think my gut feeling is we're going to win this. And this is not wishful thinking. The way what they did. See, we lost one point, and that is the wording. They claimed that they had the right, and the court basically agreed that they had the right to change the law, even though they didn't have a simple majority because of the wording that sadly was in the initiative, the original initiative. It said taxes or it said a thing or any other taxes. That was in there, and it was interpreted to mean that the legislature could kind of do anything they want. The other prong where the state could very well lose is, and it's actually wrong. They performed a legal act in an illegal manner. Okay, the way they ran this through the House, they had, I mean, it was very top secret. They did a bait and switch on the bills, pretending it's going to be one thing. It turned out it was against another, and then they violated a lot of their internal rules as to how they're supposed to do that. They just ran roughshod. So if they lose on that point, performing a legal act in an illegal way, the whole thing goes down. The tax will not stand. So this is what it's weighing on. And then there's other lawsuits that they've started also, which is kind of creative. It may be consolidated, into the one we have. That's always a possibility, or they'll continue to run it on a separate track.
Hey,
Uh,
Tim, in terms of legislation, also right now that we don't like, and maybe you understand better than I, the legislature's got some law coming up that is negative. Jamie was talking about it, but the tax is bad, but there are other issues also, I think, in terms of legislation that is coming down.
Well, I understand that. My thought is this. I mean, yes, it's true. There's stuff being introduced, and there's even a bill introduced to abolish the tax, okay, in the legislature. But I don't see that going anywhere. And number two, anything else, a three-quarters supermajority is extremely, excruciatingly hard to pull off, to get those kind of numbers. Almost impossible. And virtually there's all kinds of very threatening bills that are out there, but they've never gotten out of committee. They're just they're nowhere. They're just not going anywhere, it seems. And so I'm not too nervous about that. Um, I'm, hopeful. Again, I think we got a good shot in court. And so, yeah, that's how I take it.
If you
Yeah,
followed if they followed the law, we would win, I think. But it is too bad about that clause of any other taxes, or
yeah.
it was left open. It could have been written to
Hmm.
make it impossible to have any other taxes.
Hmm. Yeah. It was just a slip. Now, again, they've also taken depositions from the individuals that actually wrote the law. I was not at the drawing board with them. I was, observing from a distance. There are a number of people, and they've taken depositions. And the idea was that was, a mistake. That was not the intent. That absolutely was not the intent. And that's all been down in writing. It's in the court docket. As to whether that's going to do any good, who knows? Oftentimes the wording is the wording, and that's what these people go by.
Oh yeah,
So
oh,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Any other points or stories you want to discuss briefly before we sign off?
There's an intriguing development recently. It just started to pop. This the only in the Democratic primary. There's Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson is running for governor. I believe he's got a good chance. He's picking up union support here and there. Joyce and Benson's been an old time figure, been around a long time. But this guy's exciting. And plus, he also said as part of his platform, he wants to abolish the 24% tax on marijuana. Why? He said, as a sheriff, he is aware he doesn't want stuff in the black market, in the illegal market. You raise that tax, it's more activity in the illegal market, so they make it more tough, more work for law enforcement. And it's not the kind of thing that we need. And he objects to targeting one particular industry. If you're going to do a tax, you kind of got to spread it over, everybody rather than targeting one. But he's exciting. I met him at the Van Buren County Democratic Party meeting in South Haven. A buddy of mine suggested I meet him. Hey, man, he's very dynamic. He's very energetic. He also it was funny that he didn't go around screaming about Trump and MAGA and the GOP and how horrible they are. He talked positive. He talked about his programs, what he wants to do, and get the sense that he just doesn't want to poison the well. He does not want to say and do crap that will make it difficult, if not impossible, to get legislation through. I really like the guy. I will be hearing more about him and everything like that. But this is an exciting development. Just started to pop this week. So
I think the most interesting thing that I have heard lately in terms of cannabis is that the popularity of vapes, vape cartridges, vape pens, even
hmm
disposable vapes, is
hmm
almost reaching the sales level of flower, of weed, marijuana. Uh, and it has a lot less odor. There's no smoke. It's so much more convenient and discreet. And I think you will see, and the rosin cartridges taste so good. I think you're going to see a continued increase in the vapes, just because there's no fooling around with it. No burning, no fire, no smoke, no smell, very little smell, and that was fascinating to me.
All right. Well, I want to respect everybody's time. Tried to keep the show at about a half an hour. Thanks for joining us today, Chuck and Tim. I'll see you again next week, and I want to thank our audience for joining us. And this is available in a variety of places, but certainly on Facebook and on many of the Facebook groups where we post it. So if you have any comments or suggestions for topics that we should be exploring or guests that we should be inviting, address those to me. That's my last name, Brennan, at MITechNews.com.